Hello YouTube, it's Mr. Vlandis. Welcome back to my channel, where I bring the fantasy realm into the physical. Today I'm going to be making you a video, reading you a story that I wrote. And this character in the story that I've written comes from a collaboration that I did, a character randomizer video, with 3 other writers. Writer Sam Wicker, Magie, Enuel, Caraballo, and in this video we created these characters and we were to make a story about them and in some form connect all the stories. So today I will be reading my character, introducing you to her, and I will be linking all of their stories and the original video in the description so you guys go check it out. So here we go. Magie groaned with pain as her eyes opened, slowly looking at the swirling black mist. It hovered 100 feet above her body. She was numb and her back hurt. Her once bright red hair began to fade, turning into a light purple. Her skin still held her clan's bluish hue, but she could feel other changes. Falling through the portal must have altered her. Calmly, she moved her hand, feeling the edge, trying to get an idea of her location. Her left hand felt a jagged edge of a rock. I must be on a ledge of some sort. Wincing with pain, her right arm forced her upper body to move, pulling herself to the edge that dropped 500 feet to the bottom. A small freshwater creek bubbled from underneath the rocks and ran underneath his body. A tear forced its way from her face as she looked down at the broken body below. She waited to look for a sign of life. None came. "I hope it was quick, my love," she began. She began to look over her body, searching for cuts and scrapes, only to find scrapes on her enchanted armor. It was a lucky chance that she had landed on here, being a small ledge protruding from the cliff face. From the looks of it, it was a slot canyon that ran miles in both directions. Above her, 200 feet rose to the surface. Looked difficult to climb. He was the climber, not I. She adjusted her belt, looking down. He had the rock, a very important rock that she needed to retrieve. The mist-like portal began to fade, leaving it nearly dark in the canyon, but she was used to the dark. Lowering herself over the edge to a foot-inch ledge, feeling for footholds. Then down again she went to a smaller ledge that made her put the leather-thin shoes to use. Her toes painfully gripped the edge. She took a deep breath. "I'm not built for this, but I can do it." She struggled for the next hour till she was 18 feet from the bottom. She was stuck. So close, but so far away. To her right was another drop-off. Fell another 500 feet, it looked. To her left was an old pine growing through the rocks. From there It had a small ledge that would give her a way down. That tree looks to be in range for me to reach it. She firmly placed her feet, getting ready for the leap. Squatting slightly, as much as the ledge could let her, she focused her quick response to the thighs as they flexed, launching her into the air towards the tree. Her left hand reached for the rough bark, but it crumbled under her light grasp. Her body followed her trajectory in flying towards the small path head first. She quickly stuck her right hand forward and forced a tumble, but in the process felt a hard pop in her hand. Once again she groaned, sitting up, holding her hand with a finger that had popped out of place. The throbbing pain ran up her arm, but this was nothing compared to what happened during the chariot races. She held the right hand in her left, taking hold of the index finger and giving it a painful pull, feeling a crunch and then a pop. Holding in her scream, not knowing what is in the canyon, something could have followed them through. Magie flexed her fingers a couple of times, feeling the discomfort, and knew she could still use them. Quietly, she began to move across the canyon floor to his body. She slowly flipped his body. She unclipped the latches of his helmet to reveal his human face and the lips she used to kiss. Her heart broke as she gently touched his cheek. On her knees, looking and mourning for his death, a small plume of smoke came from his left hand. The rock must be there. Being that he was the magic user, he must have opened the portal. The black soot that covered his hand meant that he used all of his magic to open it. He tried to save us. Gently, she opened his hand with the popping sounds of charred flesh. She pulled the necklace holding the rock from his hand. It was a special rock. It was an encased dragon sprite. Many mages and magic users had them to enhance their powers. It was outlawed in her homeland. This was one of the reasons for their need to escape. Taking the leather straps of his shoulder, she began to drag him over to a small sand cave to one side of the canyon. She pulled a sword that was held on his hip and slowly dug a hole deep enough to bury him. Then slowly placed rocks over the grave and around, making it raised enough not to wash away. Magie walked with a wince as her body began to relax from the adrenaline high. She walked for miles down the dried waterbed that cut this slot canyon. The sand crunched under her boots, and it was a good thing that the sound was not too loud. Over the echoing breeze that bounced off of the sandstone, a subtle boom could be heard. 100 feet ahead of her was a strong moonlight shining through a crack in the wall canyon. The crack was 2 feet wide, but it was clear that it led to a bluff 100 feet upward. Magie took a breath and began to maneuver through the crack. She struggled climbing the loose rock and sand, giving an extra workout to an already tired body. After 10 minutes of climbing and squeezing through, her head exited the crack. The sword and pouch she carried snagged on every corner, which made it harder for her to completely exit. Once on top, she could see complete length of the slot canyon. To her left, it slithered down to a town 20 miles away. Others climbed and cut through the mountains. The edge that she stood on was not yet the top. Then she heard it again, a subtle boom, but this time a flash came from the direction of the town. Curious, she moved closer to the edge to get a better view. What she saw was fantastical. A large being breathed in flame, ripping apart a building. She quickly reached into her pouch, pulling a spyglass to get a better look. The townfolk running and screaming. Others swooped up and tossed into a now bubbling puddle of lava. The creature seemed to spew it from the mouth. Its claws looked to be white with heat searing through the wood of the building. This town could use my help. But these beings have been extinct for ages. She thought for a moment. How can this be? He must open a portal to another plane. She took hold of the stone that hung around her neck. It pulsed with the warmth of her touch. The being roared as the people at its feet fell on their knees and began to beg for mercy. And in a ferocious movement began to slurp up the lava that had smoldering bodies in it like soup. And then it spoke with the boom of a speech, but she could not make it out. And then it turned and began to lumber up the mountain, out of view. The cries were faint, but she could imagine the pain. She could imagine the suffering. The buildings had burst into flames, and the other buildings looked to be smoldering with the heat of the being. She had to help. With renewed vigor, she began to long trek down to the troubled town. Well, that's what I came up with my character. I know I left it kind of vague on where she was and where she came from, but hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it ties in good enough with the other stories. If not, then have some work to do then. Thank you for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and as well as also head over to their channels, look at their videos, and look at the character randomizer video as well, and try to come up with your own stories. And as always, guys, stay being creative.